Yeah, yeah. Ken, you guys have got a great ministry online and you're really using the internet well. There seems to be a growing censorship on Christians, in particular freedom of speech. Should we expect this to get worse? And if so, how should we be proactively preparing for that?
You know, Christians need to understand that that's what's happening in our culture is nothing new, and it's been going on for 6,000 years. You go back to the garden when God said to Adam, Adam, don't eat the fruit of this one tree as a test of obedience. In other words, obey God's word. And then the devil came to Eve and said, did God really say? In other words, the attack was on God's word, the authority of God's word. You can be as God. You decide truth for yourself. In other words, obey man's word. And so a battle began between God's word and man's word. And if your foundation is God's word, you build your thinking on that, as we said earlier, which gives you a Christian worldview. And so we know what marriage is because God created marriage. God created gender. God created all the basic entities of universe and life. And Genesis 1 to 11 gives us a foundation for everything, for all of our doctrine. So we know what we believe. If you start from man's word, then just like it says in the book of Judges, when there's no king to tell them what to do, they'll do what is right in their own eyes. If man is the ultimate authority, then morality is subjective. It's all relative. And out of that comes moral relativism. What we're seeing happening in our culture is a clash between two worldviews. And it's a worldview of the absolutes of Christianity and a worldview of moral relativism, because there's two foundations. See, in an ultimate sense, there are only two religions in the world. In an ultimate sense, there's only two foundations, God's word, man's word. What's happened in our Western world is that in the past, the Judeo-Christian ethic that came out of the Bible sort of permeated the culture. And so Christian morality was sort of accepted even by non-Christians. But the more that younger generations have been indoctrinated in secular humanism through the public education system and secular universities and the media, they become more consistent by building their thinking on man's word. And so their morality has changed to one of moral relativism, which has become the predominant worldview in our culture. And that's one of the reasons why, understand, when the Judeo-Christian ethic was the major worldview, and even though the majority would not have been Christians, still, when that Judeo-Christian ethic permeated the culture, then that conflict was still there, but in a different way. Now that you have secular humanism, moral relativism become the dominant worldview in the culture, then those who hold to the absolutes of Christianity are considered the bad guys. They're the enemy. They're accused of hate speech when they say there's only one marriage, one God created, man and a woman, or only two genders, male and female. Immediately that's hate speech. So what we're seeing is an increasing opposition to Christians because the Christian worldview has really shrunk in our culture. And we're seeing the younger generations much more atheistic, much more secular in their worldview. And so Christians will more and more be considered the enemy. And so they'll also be more and more persecuted, which we're seeing happening in all sorts of ways in our once very Christianized West, whether it's, preachers arrested for preaching publicly, on a street corner against gay marriage or homosexual behavior, or saying that, drag queens shouldn't be able to, impact little children, or when we say that, allowing kids to decide to change their gender and so on, when, kids aren't allowed to drive motor cars until they're, 16, 17, 18, or aren't allowed to vote until they're a certain age, yet they can decide their gender. And so those who say, no, you can't do that, then we're the enemy. And so Christians need to be aware this is, if it keeps going the way it is going to get worse and worse, and there'll be increasing persecution, and they're going to need to know how to stand and how to talk to these people. And you can't just deal with it at a worldview level, because the worldview you have depends upon the foundation you have. So Christians need to learn how to talk to people correctly, starting with the foundation, or they're not going to be able to even have an impact on them. And so we're going to see this conflict increasing up here at this level. And sadly, most churches, I don't think, have taught people how to think correctly to be able to deal with the conflict that we see.